You have exactly 3 seconds to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I'll appear in your dreams tonight. To ask for a donation for that cup of coffee, link below.
This is the Funan Canal, a key project. Scheduled to begin construction in August this year. Contrary to enthusiasm in southern Cambodia, Vietnam is expressing extreme concern about this canal project due to its potential unimaginable consequence. However, even Cambodia suffers significant repercussions from this risky project. In other words, the 1 billion Funal could have negative impacts on both Vietnam, Cambodia, but why is Cambodia's waterway transportation system always considered weak, primarily relying on, according to approximately 33%. Cambodia's total import and export goods were transported through Vietnamese seaports, with an estimated total value of around 3 billion each year. Road transport frequently experiences congestion, and river transport is unable to handle such a large volume of goods, leading high costs and delays. This long-term situation makes it difficult for domestic businesses to access international markets, leading to inefficient import and export of goods. Attracting foreign investors is, even as no one wants to invest in a country without an efficient transportation system. Furthermore, Cambodia's agricultural production faces many difficulties due to a lack of stable irrigation water sources. Agricultural areas depend on the rainy season, and outdated irrigation systems lead to low and unstable yields compared to other countries in the region. Cambodia's production consistently ranks at the bottom. It is not surprising that the Funan Canal is considered a landmark project because it will address almost all the difficulties Cambodia is facing. Specifically, the Funan Canal will become a new domestic transportation route, meeting some of the demand for goods transportation and relieving congestion on frequently congested road routes. More importantly, the Funan Canal can give Cambodia greater self-sufficiency in import and export of goods, not to mention its potential to provide a stable irrigation water source. The project is intended to improve agricultural productivity and output. Prime Minister Hun Manet described the project as breathing through its own nose. So Cambodia is ready to do anything to realize it. According to Cambodian announcements, the project is expected to upgrade and renovate 180 canals and river. The canal sections are designed to be large enough for ships with a tonnage of up to 1,000 tons to pass through. Knowing this information, the Mekong River Commission, MRC, has repeatedly requested Cambodia to share the results of the feasibility study of the canal. But Vietnam also expressed its desire for Cambodia to share information. We hope Cambodia will share full information about the project and conduct a detailed assessment of its impact. However, recently the Cambodian government declared that it has no obligation to consult with the MRC and other Mekong sub-region countries about the canal project. Even on May 16th, Hun sent Prime Minister Hun Manet to start construction as soon as possible for development the country's economy, and avoiding unfavorable opinions are important. However, according to Stimson, reputable news site in the field of international policy research and global security, the construction of the Funan Canal could increase the risk of water security and flooding in Vietnam and reduce the legal value of the 1995 Mekong Agreement. Cambodia has always been very interested in and actively participated in the 1995 Mekong Agreement. However, with the Funan Canal project, this country resolutely refused to implement prior consultation process required by the 1995 Mekong Agreement by circumventing the law. Specifically, Article 5 of the 1995 Mekong Agreement requires projects drawing water from the main Mekong River to undergo prior consultation with the MRC. However, Cambodia circumvented the law by describing the Funan Canal project as a tributary project drawing water from the Basak River, also known as the Ha River, and not from the Mekong River. In other words, they asserted that the Ha River supplies water to the Fun, not the Mekong River, taking water from the Mekong. There's no reason for them to carry out the diversion process. However, look at the design images of the Funan Canal and its ports, submitted by the Cambodian National Mekong River Commission in its report to the MRC. In this image, the Funan Canal connects the two Mekong River channels, the Tien River and the Ha River, to the river mouths along the Gulf of Thailand, outside the Mekong River basin. From the map, it's clear that the Funan Canal's starting point is from the main channel of the Mekong River before flowing into the Ha River. This means the Funan Canal must take water from the main channel of the Mekong River first, not just from the Ho. However, former Prime Minister Hun Sen publicly stated that the canal does not connect to the main channel of the Mekong River. But regardless of how the Ha River is defined, the design above proves this statement inaccurate. Moreover, the Mekong Agreement clearly states that all inter-basin diversion projects must follow prior consultation with the MRC, but Cambodia is ignoring this and controlling it by the project will not have any significant impact on the daily and annual flow of the Mekong River system. The reason given is that Cambodia will use a diversion system to prevent water from flowing out of the main Mekong River channel, similar to the Mekong River lock system in Thailand. If properly managed and operated, the lock system is indeed capable of preventing flow from the main Mekong River channels. In that case, the downstream water level in Vietnam would be minimally affected. However, this is not a valid reason. This project still needs prior consultation with the MRC because it has the potential to divert water from the Mekong River basin to coastal estuaries in Cambodia, because Cambodia is deliberately circumventing the law and even withholding important project parameters. The MRC has not yet been able to conduct an appropriate assessment of the Funan Canal. The first worrying impact that the Funan Canal will create for Vietnam is the loss of Mekong River flow to the Mekong Delta. On former Prime Minister Hun Sen, on social media, Vice Chancellor Sun Chath asserted that the Funan Canal assisted agricultural activities by providing water for crop cultivation until May 0, 2024. He also mentioned the irrigation benefits of the canal. However, the contradiction here is that Cambodian documents do not mention the irrigation and agricultural benefits of this. Look at the image above. The canal is located in a delta area that is frequently flooded during the rainy season, so it doesn't need to draw water from the river for irrigation. But during the dry season, the canal will draw water from the Mekong River to irrigate its crops. Thus, Vietnam's concern about the loss of the Mekong River's flow to the Mekong Delta is entirely justified. Not to mention that when assessing the impact of building the new canal, discovered that this canal will expand existing canals with low dike and at the same time cut across floodplains and rural areas that currently lack canals. 2. Explain further. The existing low dike allow floodwaters to flow naturally during the rainy season to protect the canals. The new canals need to have higher dikes to prevent damage from flooding. However, building higher dikes will change and divide a large part of the flood, prevent floodwaters from flowing into Vietnam. This will cause many negative consequences. Firstly, the high embankments of the canal will block the natural flow of floodwaters from Cambodia into Vietnam during the rainy season. This could cause drought in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, which usually receives floodwater for agricultural irrigation. In the past decade, a part of the Viet Nam Canal in An Giang and Kiên Giang provinces has been lowered to allow seasonal floods to irrigate much of the western part of the Mekong. The impact on the Viet Nam Canal will cause a loss of natural irrigation water for a large part of the Mekong, affecting large-scale agricultural production. According to scientist Lian Tuan from Canto University, in dry years like 2016, the canal could reduced by more than half the amount of water flowing from the Mekong River to the low-lying delta that Vietnam depends on for irrigation and aqua. Secondly, the high embankments will prevent floodwaters from passing through, causing water to accumulate and flow horizontally along the canal, putting pressure on the riverbed and potentially causing floods in the surrounding areas. The upstream area is not frequently flooded. In fact, the documents provided by the CNCM do not mention specific data on the height, length, and location of the flood dikes to assess and model the impacts that the new dikes will cause. The lack of detailed information on the dikes will reduce the accuracy of flood forecasting models, leading to difficulties in preparation and response, and increasing the risk of damage to flood-affected areas. Thirdly, during the dry season, the Mekong Delta is heavily dependent on the Mekong River flow for freshwater for domestic use and agriculture. If this water flow is reduced, people will lack clean water, directly affecting their health and daily lives, and simultaneously reducing rice and other crop yields, not to mention the increased saltwater intrusion from the sea and land, which damages cultivated land, reduces crop yields. Aquaculture difficult. According to a United Nations report, saltwater intrusion has become a serious problem, especially in provinces like Kamau and Bien Tre. Any action violated the agreement on the use of the mainstream and dry season for use in the basin must follow prior consultation with the MRC and require agreement between the member state, currently heavily dependent on Vietnamese ports to import raw materials from China and export finished products to the United States and Western countries. In 2023, the total bilateral trade between Vietnam and Cambodia included service fees paid by Cambodia when passing through the Mekong River route on Vietnamese territory. Current, about 33% of volume of Cambodian import and export goods transported through Vietnamese seaports is handled by Cambodia. Cambodia expects that the completion of the Funan Canal will reduce the total volume of goods passing through Vietnam by up to 7%, so revenue from transportation fees, customs, and many other costs from Cambodia will certainly decrease. Finally, importantly, some major foreign and Vietnamese news outlets, such as Bloomberg, The Diplomat, and the People's Police Political Academy, have raised concerns about the issue of security. The Funan Canal project is not merely a socio-economic development project, but also has immense military value. It will significantly impact the defense and security situation of the entire region. Specifically, the canal will facilitate the docking of the Chinese Navy near the Vietnamese border. Military experts say the canal will create the necessary depth for military vessels to move from the Gulf of Thailand or from the REM base deep into Cambodia. For this reason, the project attracted the attention of the US government. Already concerned about the potential presence of China, this concern is not unfounded. Specifically, the Center for Strategic and International Studies reported that two Chinese warships docked at the new pier of the Dream Naval Base and remained there for several months. However, Cambodia vehemently rejected these reports. Specific, President Hun Sen posted on Facebook arguing that Cambodia and Vietnam are good neighbors, cooperation in. Secondly, the deployment of Chinese troops into Cambodia is contrary to the country's constitution. Thirdly, the Funan Canal was built purely for economic purposes. Only time will tell how it will benefit. However, experts highly rate the benefits that the Funan Canal brings to Cambodia because the price paid is too high. Firstly, similar to Vietnam, the construction of the canal could increase the risk of upstream flooding, and undesirable areas include parts of Taco City, the southern suburbs of Phnom Penh, and the newly established Techcombank International Airport, all very important areas playing a strategic role in Cambodia's sustainable development. Ineffective upstream flood control could cause serious flooding, significant economic damage, affecting the lives of thousands of people and disrupting transportation and goods transport. Many researchers in Western countries are using the term debt trap to criticize loans under China's Belt and Road Initiative. This is used to imply that loans from China can lead to debtor nations becoming financially dependent on China or having to cede control of key assets if they fail to repay the debt. Many countries have fallen into China's debt trap such as Sri Lanka, Laos. As a result, these countries have had to cede control of strategically important assets or reduce their national sovereignty due to their inability to repay the debt. For example, Sri Lanka had to lease the Hambota port to China for 99 years, and Laos had to lease military high debt from 7 billion railway project, reducing its financial self-sufficiency. Regarding the Phunam Canal project, after a meeting in September 23, the China Bridge and Road Cooperation Company signed an agreement with Cambodia to finance the construction of the canal. Specifically, the company will directly invest to implement the project. The contract stipulates that China has exclusive management rights over the canal. With the canal under a contract lasting 40 to 50 years, it will then be transferred to Cambodia. If can escape the Chinese debt trap with a 7 billion loan under a 40 to 50-year like other countries, analysts worry that Cambodia could become financially and strategically dependent on China. If China controls the canal for too long and profits are insufficient to cover costs, Cambodia could lose control. Furthermore, as mentioned above, Cambodia losing control of the canal could increase China's military presence in the region, raising security concerns for neighboring countries like Vietnam. The 7 billion Phunam Canal not only poses a debt trap risk for Cambodia but also has serious consequences for Vietnam. Meanwhile, Cambodia continues to provide unclear information to the Mekong River Commission and faces environmental repercussions from changes in the Mekong River's flow. Given these realities, the question arises: is Cambodia building a future? Is it a hybrid or simply a dangerous illusion? Music.